Wow, what a gorgeous panel. Ooh, more music. Excellent. It is the Latin voices anyway. I guess I'm supposed to speak above these things. Oh, good. Wow, what a gorgeous panel. Uh, I'm having an echo. More music. Please turn off Jubilo. Okay. It is the Latin voices anyway. How can I turn it off? I guess I'm supposed to speak. Here we go. Is that better? It was me, ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry. Hey, demás.
Disculpe.
I am Daniel Jaques. My pronouns are he, him, his, and welcome to Reencuentro 2021, the Latino Theater Company's festival at the LATC, and this is the Latinx Queer Voices panel. I am actually dialing in from San Diego, which is originally Kumeyaay Nation, and who I'm very proud to say that they inhabit both countries, Mexico and the United States. And these are people, like most indigenous cultures, who actually historically and currently celebrate the Two-Spirit. So I'm very happy to say that. So I'd like to welcome the panel to the digital stage. And if you can introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and your work, your pronouns, your land acknowledgement, your connections to the Encuentro. And let's start with Marga.
Hi. I'd like to give a round of silent applauso for Daniel for going back to back with keeping the party going on the virtual stage. My name is Marga Gomez, and I'm doing a show called Spanking Machine on Friday. And this is my second time at Encuentro, Reencuentro. The last time I was here was in 2017, right? I was there. I was in a place. It was a building. There was rum. That's all I remember. And I have to say that seeing all the presentations, Rodrigo's last night, and Jesus and so many, I've been blown away by how much queer representation there is this year at Reencuentro. Maybe because we're on the down low because it's virtual, but it's really super gay. I love it. I am my pronouns are she, they, and Gemini, and I am beaming to you from San Francisco, land stolen from the Ohlone people. I'm originally from New York, Washington Heights. You may have heard of it. And I have written and performed 13 one-person shows. And I think that's it for now.
Great. Gabriel.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Torres. Pronouns are they, them, and I am joining from the occupied and unceded lands of the Lenape people, Manhattan. I am a multidisciplinary artist. I work in conversations between storytelling and multimedia and community engagement. It's a big part of what I do. Super excited to be here talking to everybody else. Also very happy about all of the queer representation throughout the whole festival. I'm with you on that, Marga. I'm representing House of Dust, the creator of House of Dust. House of Dust was and is a media installation as part of a big campaign for substance use in Latinx queer communities. And it was produced with the Tank NYC, my collective, and presented at Teatro Círculo originally this summer.
Love Teatro Círculo. Thank you. Spanking Machine and the House of Dust are still going to be premiere in the next couple of days. So make sure you get to see them. And last night we just saw Canción de Cuna para un Niño Herido, uh, which is one of Gabriel's pieces. I mean, Rodrigo's pieces. A ver, Gabriel, te toca.
Rodrigo.
Rodrigo.
Ooh, overload, Zoom overload.
I know.
Está bien, no hay problema.
Is it happy hour time? So I go get my tequila.
Hello, everyone. Rodrigo Garcia here from the Mohuec Malolani People's Lands, Ancestral Land in San Jose, California. Pronounced he, him, él, originally from Mexico City. And, you know, I'm a teatrista, actor, director, aspiring playwright, and I do everything that needs to be done. I love theater, and my focus is on theater in Espanol, but also, I do all kinds of theater, but my focus is teatro en Español. And happy to be here, just like Marga said. I'm just delighted to see so many queer bodies on stage and stories. It's just a delight.
I have a question.
Yes.
Rodrigo, were you Maria Feliz last night?
I wish I was. I don't have the body, but I know I wasn't.
Oh, you're just as beautiful, though.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You made me blush.
It's Rodrigo was just with me talking. We had an artist discussion about the play just now, so we're both fried. And forgive us if we don't say something because we thought we already said it. But Rodrigo is one of the co-founders of Teatro Alebrijes.
Yes.
So last but not least, my favorite person in the world, Vicky Grice. I don't want to introduce you, but I know you know I love you.
I love you too. As Virginia Grice, she, her, hers pronouns, siempre norteada. I was raised and now live in Texas, which is called Deccan territory. Currently, I'm in Houston until Wednesday when I go back home, putting up a show here called Rasgos Asiáticos. And I'm really happy to be on this panel. And I love it, Marga. I love Daniel, and it's wonderful to meet new gays. Is always fun and exciting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. So this conversation can go so many places, right? From the theoretical to the experimental to the experiential. But I was told not to get too much in my head. So, and just talk about our work. But before we do that, I want each of you to land into a definition of what Latinx queer voices are. Today, what is that definition today for you? Who wants to go first?
I think it's about taking space and pushing past the gatekeepers. I mean, that's been the conversation that, we've been having when we're lucky enough to be in the same room. Latinx queer theater is also a voice in queer theater in general, which I feel is not supportive of voices of color. And so, it's always, we are doubly fucked, and not in a good way, that we need to hold our ground. We need to tell our stories, and we need to take the stage. And I think the Los Jóvenes in queer Latinx or Latine theater are not backing down. So I would say that's it for me.
Breaking doors. Great.
I can go next. I think I've been thinking about this all day because of the panel.
Oh, good.
But when I think about queerness, I think three things always come up for me. Thinking about revolution and like resistance, celebration, and reclamation of something, like reclamation of the word queer and saying we're queer. But then when just thinking about the context and theater and all of those things, if I put the word Latinx or my identity as a Colombian person, what really comes to me is rituals and ancestry and connection to the land. It's like the main thing that comes to my mind. And then just thinking about storytelling, I would say stories that are more symbolical or folklore or tradition or oral history than linear stories.
I can go next. And from what Marga and Gabriel are saying, and thinking on the work that we do in Teatro Alebrijes is resisting, is resistance. It's reclaiming the spaces that were not created for us and making sure that our stories are elevated in a way that is empowering and dignifying. And I always stress this, the power of reshaping the narratives that were created for us and make them in something more dignifying, and bringing them and be completely unapologetic about our joteria and the way we present those stories. I think that's, for me, that's what represents the work that we do, and as queer artists, queer Latinx artists.
Thank you.
I think that I want to preface everything in the panel to say, like, I really can only talk about my own experiences and who I am and where I am as an artist. And I really do feel like hopefully most people, who I am as an artist has changed remarkably in the pandemic. And I feel like it's changed in regards to this question in particular of what is Latinx queer voices, and what is the work that I want to make in this moment. And so it's interesting, Marta, as you talk about the gatekeepers, I'm really interested in building houses, and I mean that in a I mean that in a poetic way, but I also mean that in a material way. What are the ways in which, and I think that this is our tradition, what are the ways in which we have cared for each other? What are the ways in which we have created celebration and party? What are the ways in which we have created space when there wasn't? Um, what are the ways in which we have transformed spaces that um, maybe were meant to be something else? And what are the ways in which we've chosen family? And I think that all of those things are really very, very important to me right now. I, in terms of Latinx queer theater, I really do want to find and create and build the spaces that do those things for us, in the spirit of revolution, in the spirit of rebellion, and in the spirit of mitote, right, which is a very Texas word. In the spirit of mitote, how we gather, how we dance, how we cry, how we fight, all of those things, in the spirit of mitote.
I would like to add that in when I was trying to think what companies do I know. I also wanted to add to the panel before with Rodrigo and Daniel that there is a theater in the Bronx that is devoted to queer Latinx work called BAD, Bronx Academy of Art
Oh
and Dance.
yeah,
So
cool.
they are, they're the East Coast cousins. But I also wanted to say that I was trying to think of like, what are the theater companies, and obviously, Spaces and off of Virginia. But I also want to give props to our cabaret, Latinx cabaret performers and creators, and our drag performers and creators, and our spoken word, because there's we all have to kind of band together as Latinx performers and storytellers in whatever medium we have at our hands.
Marga, I feel just coming into this idea of community and the idea of houses and the places that we utilize as the centers of engaging. I think that's what I meant when I was trying to say like non-linear stories. I feel that the construct of storytelling for theater sometimes can be so precise for institutions in the United States that it itself puts a mindset in conditioning queer artists and thinking that that's the only way of creating theater, when in reality there's performance all throughout. There's a way of extending.
And clean. So I would like for Latinx queer voices to keep it sucia.
You got me worried there for a
Lucia, but
moment.
not cooking.
I have been told there is a distinction.
I won't go into that in this panel.
Virginia, I have to tell you that in the last Encuentro, you blew my mind. You did. Wait, no, it was at the convening. Where was the one? It was at the convening in New
In
York,
New York.
where you did the performance with water.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I think that changed my life.
So, anything else to say on this? No. I want to throw it to the definition of just queer then, because I think all these panels are very intersectional, right? It's you're Latino, you're like queer. It's about, they want you to define identity, and we shouldn't be forced to define identity when we are presenting something on stage. The conversations that what you've said are about queer performances led by queer people. How do you feel about the need to have in a traditional, to call it traditional, storytelling play, the inclusion of gay characters, gay or lesbian, LGBTQ characters, queer characters? Should there be a big issue made about their inclusion in it, or are those their stories and we don't need to be in there at all? I'm going to reference a little bit of Calle de la Resistencia that was just videotaped here, and part of the conversation was the struggle within the cast to actually say todes instead of todas and todos, and how easily that was to just make the adjustment, but how there had to be many conversations to really make that sound like it was no big deal. Go ahead.
I just have I don't know how to answer this. I think this is a really big question, but I'm gonna try to answer it through what comes to my mind right now, and is that I think because of the pandemic, Virginia was mentioning a change in my mind. I think it really made a change of thinking how I don't believe that representation is enough anymore. I don't think that creating representational work is enough. It's not enough to make stories, and then out of those stories, even if it's a market small or big, create some sort of commodification and stop there when there's a representation to a community. So I would even go further to say maybe it's not only about the representation, but how we utilize those stories to give back to those communities that we're saying that we represent after the stories are done. How can the stories be an action for? And then just thinking about this idea of representation of the characters, I think there's a connection between that and what I'm saying with stigma. Because if we think we live in a world that is shame-based. We're constantly being shamed into doing things. And the idea, gay people, queer people, we have existed forever and we're always going to exist. The difference is whether we're being hidden or we're visible. And time is creating more visibility. So I would say that anything that represents a world should have some sort of relationship with what is happening in the world in the context that it is representing. And I think that we are part of that. And there has to be a consciousness of understanding the representation instead of the place where the stories are being made and the impact it has to those audiences.
Yeah.
What he said.
Excellent.
What they said.
I think talking about, tell me if this question is if I'm answering the question or if I'm going off the rails, which I promise not to do.
No, you should.
I feel like the question of what is queer, and this really is a thing that I think I haven't ever articulated until today, and so it may be I'm articulating this for the first time. I really do believe that everybody could be queer if they allowed themselves to be. I want to see the queer in everything. One of the things I like about the word queer is that it is off center. It is different. It is it isn't mainstream. It is meant to be. Queer is my other favorite word is chueca. Like there's some chuec to it. There's some norteadaness to it. And so I think that then translates also in terms of aesthetics for me. And so as we were talking about linear and nonlinear, I've never arrived anywhere in a straight line. I don't know how to tell a story that way. There's nothing straight about me. And so that's true about processes. That's true about how I tell stories. And for me, my own political commitments, it's true about how I relate to communities. And the thing that I haven't quite articulated yet, I just spent, by matter of circumstance, I just spent 4 days with 3 cisgendered Mexicano men, straight men, con bigote, in a home talking about making barbacoa in the ground. And we're all in the home together. And it made me realize how often I'm just not around that very often. And there was such a beautiful tenderness to the ways in which these men took care of each other on a construction site. The way that they called each other papa, take a look at this. Don't, no te agüites. It's okay. We're gonna get this done. Like this is the care. And I was like, there's something with these very straight cisgendered men. I was like, there's something very queer about the ways in which they're treating each other right now. And so, and I don't know what that has to do with theater and that type of work, but it also made me realize these boxes that sometimes we put ourselves into is that what is true for me is what queerness does for me is it busts open the box and it allows me to see the possibility of queerness in everything, in every interaction, to really try to find where that exists in the ways in which we interact with each other.
I agree. I am very happy to identify as queer, but I also feel that we don't see enough lesbians. And so I'm just going to show a clip. It doesn't have, it'll just play. You won't hear the words, but you'll know what's happening. And this is, I hope it's large enough, but this is Carmelita Tropicana and I in a show called Single Wet Female. Is it large enough for you to see?
No.
It's not? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, okay, how about that? So this is a takeoff on this movie called Single White Female. And it's about, we're one person. It's like the Fight Club, but we have split because we have internalized racism. And this particular scene is just some lesbian action that I would still I still want to see more of. I still want to celebrate. And they're taking a bath. That's basically it. I'm back in my. That's all the clip for now. But I wanted to just throw that in there just to have more lesbian desire, because in this evolution that we have and non with smashing the binary, and and opening queer to everyone who is subverting against the patriarchy. I do think that desire between women sometimes just seems to disappear. So I want to keep that going.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
Also, I'm sorry if I can just say something about that too. Also, in terms of, I do work in prisons, also in terms of how that desire is still criminalized, is something that, like, when I do work in prisons, one of the things that I've noticed is how many butch folks that I'm dealing with and that I'm working with, how many people that are queer or are lesbian, or that the desire between women, how it's still so highly criminalized, is something that has struck me in the work that I've been doing recently. So, anything sort of masculine of center in terms of even in terms of identity, becomes like just that walking in the world becomes a criminal act, right? And there's something about that desire, so that this, sex between folks inside of that prison is a criminal act. That, what that means.
that's interesting. The first thing that popped to mind, Virginia, was the fantasy of straight men that two sexy women be part of their fantasy, right? And what I'm so that's a lot more acceptable than two men for straight men, and but what's important is the carrying of oneself, is that if it doesn't conform to what their perception of their binary, then there's a problem.
Right, because they're saying we don't need a man, and you can't do that. You can only be this kind of lesbian in the fantasy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just I would love to see more queer uh, stories that have queer characters, that have you know lesbian characters, as well as gay male, as well as non-binary. But that's of course a lot.
I on my side, just adding up to this idea of things on representation that I would love to see. I would love to see more queer characters struggling, and by that I mean I would love to see more queer characters going through the things that we go inside of our communities, because there's so many different layers of oppressions and insecurities that we go through that nobody, let's say, at least I know in my generation, there are so many things that we never have anybody to talk to about. And that when you go on the TV, when you go on a story, what you find is either the rich gay person, or then the person who's just in the club, or like these very specific stereotypes, and don't really expand to all of the things that are happening. And especially I would love to see more stories that talk about substance use, because it's a big thing in our community, and it's a big pandemic, and it's been happening for so many years, and it just feels that every time that it gets as a subject inside of a space is stigmatized, and there's so much shame behind it, that just by opening up it could create spaces for healing, and
And
knowledge, like information about it.
and I think that has to do a lot with who writes those stories, right? And that has been, I mean, a historical issue that we face. Who gets to write history just in general? Who gets to tell the story? And I was mentioning in the panel before how important it is to reclaim these spaces, to transform the narratives that have been created for us. And in terms of representation, who gets to write? I mean, am I going to write a story about, or a story of a narrative that does not belong to me, that I don't associate, and I'm just going to write it so I can check the box? Um, because how deep can someone go when you don't understand the nuances of these experiences?
Mm.
Mhm. And it's full of nuances, right? I mean, even in this panel, we're all mostly white raced, brown raced. There's no Afro Latinos. There's no people that identify as trans, for example. For
And
the
no disabilities that we can see included in this festival
that we can see.
that we
that we
can,
can see.
yeah, porque yo estoy más para allá que para acá, la mera verdad. Um, so thank you for that. That's very interesting. A lot more deep than I thought we were going to get in terms of what queer theater is, queer voices. Um, so what my next question is, how do you guys keep doing it? And how did you start doing it? Who were your inspirations? Who were your influences? And how have they developed over time?
Mm.
And
I,
where are they going after this pandemic?
I could start with that. I think my biggest inspiration was my acting teacher when I was 14, and he told me that I looked too gay to play actor. And it was bad. In Colombia, it was bad because his voice, which is funny, he reached out to me this week, and I was like, I've been talking to my therapist, and I think it's best for us to never talk again. But not truly. But he told me that he was gonna be my father, and he was gonna teach me how to be a man. And I think that's where the rebellion part came in. And like, no, this is, I don't have to behave a particular way for you to define who I am and what I can do. And thinking about references, um, there's a show, a monologue by Jose Manuel Freidel in Colombia that's called Ideas Chiqui. And it's about a drag queen who it's inside of a very small apartment. It's during the communism in Medellin. And she's very scared of going out because if she goes out, the police are killing them. And the whole thing is about her talking to her mom and all of this stuff. And then suddenly she decides to go out. And when she goes out, she gets killed, but by another drag queen because she owed her money for a wig. Um, and that whole thing really started to like make me think about the things that I was going through as a teenager in Colombia, as a gay teenager, and inside of the own oppression that I was dealing inside of the community because I was really big and I was dealing with a lot of other like oppressions and things. Um, all of that to see those personal experiences to say I think my work has always been based on the experiences and the stories that I've lived and try to understand what that is and how that has meaning for others and how I can create space for others in a way that is just authentic to myself. Because I don't want to represent anybody else's story. I want to tell my own and see if that creates space for others to also be able to share their own. And I think where it's going is I'm really thinking about sanctuary and community. I would love for House of Dust to truly become something where we have a space and I'm able to say, here is a space where people can come and talk about their substance use and not feel stigmatized, not feel that they have to urinate on a little bottle to prove that
Mm.
they are not utilizing the substances, but where people can just come and talk, because that's what has helped me through recovery. And I know that connection is really what helps people to reconnect and get away from the isolation of the substances.
Because you asked this question of us prior, I sort of began writing a list. And what it made me realize, which I didn't know until you asked this question, is that I was introduced to lesbian voices and theater before I was able to go to the club. And so Carmelita Tropicana, Marga Gomez, Peggy Shaw, were all artists that I was introduced to when I was very young, when I was 18 years old, whose work I've continued to follow. Um, and I and I and this question of how do you keep doing it is one that I really would like to hear more of folks to talk about, because Marga, I have to say, you know, this isn't just trying to throw love back and forth, though I think we should be doing more of that.
Yes.
As that
Yes, I agree.
I have been so inspired by your bicicleta morning routine performances you've been doing on Facebook. And these ways in which you've shifted and changed to like, okay, now how do I keep performing? And it feels like that. How do I keep performing in Esta Noche in the nightclub? How do I keep the comedy shows alive? How do I like, well shit, no one's here. How do I learn how to work this camera and get on a bicicleta and just keep
Wow.
moving? And I'm not kidding. It has been something that's been so incredibly inspiring to watch. Like, you really are actually moving. Like, how do we keep this work moving, right?
Yeah.
And so there's something that's incredibly inspiring about that. And I think that generationally, like when I think about that moment of being 18 and seeing that work for the first time, it was something that made me feel like I wasn't alone. Though I don't necessarily identify as lesbian, it was something that made me feel like I wasn't alone. Like it's this thing about a desire for a woman, and also the way in which all of it comes together. So the politics, the humor, the silliness, like let me tell you about my dad, and let me tell like all of these, and now we're going to talk about, I still remember the performance that you did about cochinas.
Oh, Christmas.
Well, you came out, no, it was the one with was this year, was this Carmelita? I maybe
12
no,
days of cochina.
No, where
No?
where you guys came out in an intertube. I may be conflating the two stories. There was this one piece that was done when everything happened with Elian in Cuba.
I think that was Carmelita's.
And
If
Carmelita
it,
came out in an intertube, and she just was
yes,
going like this and
yes,
telling the
yes,
story. And it was,
yes.
I think it was something that you guys may have even done together in Austin. I think it may have been. Anyways,
In Austin, we did Single Wet Female, the clip that I was showing. Yeah.
all that to say, all of these acts that people have been, all of this work, all of this has been incredibly influential to me. But in terms of my own artistic trajectory, I really was brought into a family of queer Black women. Like, they really were the ones that raised me and allowed me, I think, to be authentic in my voice, where I have often felt in many not queer spaces, but in many Latino spaces, and I purposely say Latino, in many Latino spaces, I feel like I have been told, like, you could be more readable if you did, you could be more mainstream if you did, people would understand you if you were a little bit less messy than maybe, you know. And I was really raised by a group of women like Sharon Bridgeforth, Omi Oshun, that really really have continued to stay with me as mentors and teachers and people that created a space for me to be authentically and uniquely me, and all my messiness and my breakdowns and my anger and my rage, which I've had, you know, which I have had to deal with over the years. Like, all of those things are like allowed me to come to the table with it, and I think that that's important, the tables that we're building for each other.
I'm going to try to follow that. Thank you so much. And on behalf of Carmelita, I'm going to pass on what you said. And I'm sure she will thank you as well. I wish she was here. And in fact, I'm going to say who I wish was here. I wish Carmelita was here. I wish Monica Palacios was here. I wish Sherry Moraga was here. I wish Susana Cook was here. And these are some of my cohorts in being a queer mujer lesbiana, tortillera in teatro. So I'm going to try to go through this real quick how I keep doing it, because I am old, people, but I can still kick. My parents were in teatro, and so I was the only child of their marriage. And it's weird because my story is in between Latin Standards, which I did at Encuentro, and Spanking Machine, which will be shown here. But I grew up watching my parents and watching them just take care of the community that we lived in Manhattan. All the Latinos who were coming to New York, and they were doing these variety shows, and I was backstage, and all the artistas would come to our house, and they were fabulous, and lots of them were gay, but we didn't talk about it. And that's what, that was my foundation. And then as I became a teenager, I unfortunately became very, very assimilated, and that's why it means so much to me to be here as well, to feel that there is, no judgment where I am at, what happened to me. But I didn't think that I would be creating because all I saw was the mainstream. And where would I fit in as, with my masculine vibe and my brown skin and my gap teeth. And then when my parents found out I was queer, I had to get the hell out of New York. I was 19, and I wound up in San Francisco because I thought there would be weed, and everyone was an artist. There was no tech, there were no computers, and that's where I realized that I could do this. I could do what my parents did for another underrepresented audience. I started doing stand-up comedy in the 80s during the onset of AIDS, and in San Francisco, it totally affected who I am as a performer. I met Monica Palacios. We had an act for a few years, and then we also sort of dovetailed into Culture Clash for a while, and there were 6 of us. And then I got into solo performance in the 90s, and this is going to be my 13th solo play that you see. And I've done it just, with no plan but to tell the story of my life and the people in my life. And from that, I feel there are ripple effects that speak to socio-political effects on our community, on being queer, on being, my mother coming from Puerto Rico, my father immigrating from Cuba, and working in a Latino or Latinx drag queen club called Esta Noche that became was sold from the 1975 to 2015. It was a Latino drag queen club for the people who could live in the Mission, who could afford to live in the Mission. Spanish-speaking audiences, Spanish-speaking drag shows, and that was gone. And so that's and why I keep doing it is because we all need to keep doing it. We all need to keep telling our stories and saying what was here before it gets wiped out by Jeff Bezos and all the billionaires. So that's why I keep doing it, and also because I get opportunities like this.
Thank you.
I want to add that for us, or for myself, I guess, the work that we did through Canción de Cuna really reflects that journey, in that a lot of us, or all of us in the ensemble, are from Mexico. And back in Mexico, and growing up like a little queer kid, we didn't really have role models. We didn't have people that we could associate. So in a way, we found those role models, or those characters that we made queer. As an example, the scene with Maria Felix, that came from this one of our members, who found Maria Felix in sort of like a vision, in a moment where he was ready to take his life. And he had a vision of Maria Felix, and Maria Felix is speaking to him. He has such an admiration for Maria Felix, for being adored by men, and being always strong, and that's what he wanted to be like her.
Mm.
So Sor Juana, this woman with this, golden tongue, talking about men in a way that she did and be so strong in religion. Or Zapata, like Virginia said, these strong men with bigote taking care of people. That was very queer. And so we created our queer characters because we didn't have any references. And through this investigation that we did in creating Canción de Cuna, we found out that some of these characters might have had queer experiences in their past. And so that had played a big role in who we are um, today. And we continue to do this work because now we want to make sure that there are more references for other folks to relate to, the ones that we didn't have and that we had to create. And so we're bringing the ones that we created or that we accumulated in our journey, and we're trying to make them more visible, more accessible, so people can have more references.
I also wanted to mention, just growing up, the work of Adelina Anthony, Sherry Moraga, who you mentioned, Marga, Astrid Haddad, who I got to see because I had no money and I convinced the people at the coffee shop to let me wait tables so that I could watch her show in Monterrey. Jesus Rodriguez, who's a much better artist than she is a politician. And I have to say, Magdalia Cruz, whose work I believe is incredibly queer.
Yeah.
I believe that her work is incredibly queer in this way that has given me permission to tell stories about my people and to go to dark places that I think, especially as a woman, we're not often allowed the space to do.
Can we just give applause to Irene Fornes?
Most definitely.
Yeah, from the 70s. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Cool. Yes. When Marga was talking about sex scenes between women on stage, I immediately thought of Migdalia Cruz, because she creates these sensual female characters that are really struggling to belong, and I guess I would say Migdalia is queer in the sense that her sensibility of what gender and sexuality is pretty open. So thanks for bringing that in. Um, uh, 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 so Evelina said in the chat, yeah, fuck mainstream, something like that. There we go. Fuck the mainstream. So that brings me to a concern that a lot
Not
of the
live
issues.
stream.
Yeah, live stream on the mainstream.
Fuck live stream. Yeah.
It's no, and this is important. It has a little bit to do with us being queer or lesbian or gay or queer writers or theater makers. There's a lot of queer, gay, lesbian performers, humans that want to be represented in society, right? So is there what would you recommend, or what are your opinions or your thoughts on again, representation? I know that we talked a little bit about representation, but what is the role of the Latino theater company, for example, on portraying gay roles, queer roles? What is the responsibility of Intar, of Teatro Luna, of all these organizations that seem to serve the Latinx community on representing who we really are?
I'd rather them support queer artists. I'd rather them support queer artists because I do think that there is a way in which in our desire to be seen and our desire to be visible, we are replicating some of the models of whatever people call the American theater that don't work for the American theater. I wish people, when people talk about that type of theater dying, like it's dying, I wish I could put a shiv in its side lonja myself. I wish it would fucking die. And I feel like there is a level of a desire for professionalization that is causing a lot of our Latino brothers and sisters to replicate a model that doesn't already work. And I do think that one of the things that happens in traditional theater is people do absolutely sit with a season box of this is our Christmas story, this is our political story, this is our funny story, this is our story by a BIPOC, this is our story by, like people do when they plan the season, sit with a box. And I think that people are sitting with similar types of boxes in other theaters of like, oh, this is we got to have a queer character, we got to have this character, we got to have. I do think that there's a little bit of boxing that's happening, and what I would much rather prefer is that people just support the queer artists that have been doing this work forever. Like, support that work. That's how it happens. And supporting that work means that if we're going to support queer work, maybe it's not even not a linear play. Maybe it's not even a play. Maybe it's something completely different.
A happening.
Completely different. The piece that I'm working on right now, it's inside of a silo where they used to dump rice into the train shed. And so we created this structure that is going to become a market of memory, because I'm talking about my grandparents in the market. We're taking every piece of wood from that structure that was designed by Tanya Oriana, packing it up and taking it to San Antonio to build a house in the backyard of somebody's property, so that we can start doing intercambios in San Antonio with other artists that are like-minded. I want people to support shit like that. Like, how do we, because part of what I feel is happening is what was so weird about the pandemic is that at one level there was no money, and then at another level there was like all of a sudden all this money started coming from different places, and I got this and I got that, and 3 organizations come together and there's $1 million, and so some organizations died, like some organizations disappeared, and some organizations got huge influxes of cash. And I'm very concerned about us replicating models that already are broken. Like, they're already not working or serving anybody but an elite class. And so what I think the responsibility of theaters in this moment, personally, all theater, Brown, Latinx, all theater in this moment, I think the purpose should be about radically reimagining what's possible. What can we do? And I feel like at the beginning of the pandemic, that was really starting to happen. And then as soon as things started to open up, people wanted to be in the place of what was somewhat familiar. And when people talk about the before times, I really urge us not to go into a place of what we were doing before, because what we were doing before wasn't working.
Virginia, so many things that are coming in with what you're saying, but I'm gonna put it this way. I'm making an assumption here. I think I'm the youngest person in this room, and make an example. I'm 25 years old, and by that, what I want to say is, I have never gotten. This is the first time that I get support for my work inside of a theater-based organization. I have never gotten support from any theater-based organization. And most of the times that I get feedback back is, I don't get your story. This is not what I'm used to read. This is so weird. It's so odd. When most of my support, I've gotten it from visual art institutions and organizations that believe that the work that is being done engage with the community in a specific way, or that it's a concept that can work for a particular purpose. And this is to say is, as with what Virginia is saying, the models that we have don't work, and they're truly created just for a certain amount of audiences that are used to seeing things in a very logical way that don't represent everybody else. So just from that point, it doesn't work. And truly, I hear so many times from art administrators saying that they're tired of having to fundraise money from people that they don't like. So there are other methods of doing that as well. There's in my generation, which is something that is happening big, is all of us coming together and seeing peer to peer, we can create communities and we can create community wealth, and we can ourselves create those places. I think what COVID truly started to ask all of us is that we cannot keep on thinking that we live on our own, even when we're isolated. We need of each other to live. And if the theater, the institution, started to be less of an institution and more of a community center, then the conversation changes because it represents everybody else. And for that, with what Virginia is saying, I think that the first step is to ask questions. Stop assuming things. Stop coming and saying, this is what we need to see. We are the ones who decide. Go to the communities and ask, what do you need? What do you want to see? And take the time and the long time that it takes for that to do that process. Because also, as a community engagement person, I hear so many times people say, well, we don't have enough time for that, or it takes a lot of money, or we want to get a show done in 3 weeks or in 3 months. Then maybe if you haven't engaged with that work truly, like the groundwork, then you don't have the consciousness to understand the responsibility that is going to have as an impact in the communities. And I think that is more important than just a production, the centering of the space.
Wow. So I was just told there's a lot of questions coming in. So here we go. Silvia Cervantes Blush asks, who have been your biggest supporters who have truly turned up to offer you a space to do the work or finance the work of Latinx queer voices?
I wanna just highlight the organization that aid me on creating House of Dust, because I think it's an incredible organization. It's called the Landromat Project, and it's an organization in New York that is based for people creating any type of projects, not only artistic, but that engage a specific community of New York City and that are thinking of radical ways of creating change. It's a place that I truly recommend, and that gives the space and the honesty to listen to what the people in residency need, and meeting where people are at and giving the resources necessary.
For us, Horizons Foundation, which is a foundation that funds queer projects and queer specific organizations, has been key in our growth. It's the first organization that believed in the work that we were doing and gave us the funds to start. And because of that, we have been able to receive funding from the county, from other organizations, but they continue to be the core of our work to be able to continue doing what we do. Horizons Foundation here in the Bay Area.
I've been not. I haven't gotten a lot of funding in my life, but I've been able to earn a living for 30 years somehow. Gambling, really. It's the it's the horses. No, but I want to say that a source of my support has been the theaters that have presented my work and premiered my work, and more than anyone, Brava Theater in San Francisco, where I'm an artist in residence. It's an art center that exists to mentor and nurture the voices of women, queer people, working families still in the Mission in San Francisco, and BIPOC community. The Public Theater has presented my work, and then I've crowdfunded. So, all those folks. I've been commissioned a few times by Dixon Place in New York and Syracuse Stage, but it's just sort of been like, I wonder how I'll get by this year, but it seems to have worked out.
Yeah.
I feel like my trajectory as an artist really shift when two organizations, by matter of complete circumstance, supported me in two different projects to do work completely the way that I wanted to do it, in all of its craziness, even when they didn't understand. And one of those was Cal Arts Center for New Performance and Borderlands Theater in Tucson, Arizona. It just happened to happen at the same time, that they both said, we will support what you're imagining. And that took me on two very different trajectories with projects that made me realize that I really wanted to do work in which I was at the helm, that are playwright driven, or that I'm driving, that I'm the force of. I really enjoy that work. And also recently Pregones Theater, when I called them up and I said, I have I want to do an album. I don't know if it'll be a performance, maybe it will. And they were just, sure, let's do it. And were super supportive and came on board to support the continuation of a project to be in a different form and in different shape. And then I would like to also mention, like, again, this thing about how we live. How do we make a career? How do we pay our fucking rent? How do we eat? I think are really important questions. The daughter of an airplane mechanic, so those are really important questions to me. As that, and so I've been very fortunate to have communities that really come together to support my work, and I think I especially find that with Chicana scholars and queer scholars. I've found that in communities in Los Angeles, Tucson, Phoenix, Houston, Dallas, and in New York, actually, which I find surprising. In San Antonio, I'm working with a gallery called Galeria Eva, and I'm currently the playwright in residence at Caramia Theater, which has also, I feel, really given me space to say, what is it that you want to do? What do you want to create? Which means also giving me a lot of space to fail, and also giving me space to fail, which I think is important.
It reminds me of Lebrijes, Rodrigo, where by talking to all the artists in the room, they created something that they wanted to do. I mean, there's so much joy in the cross-dressing, in the telling of the stories of staging sexual encounters at a bar. I think it is a place that doesn't close down your impulses to be who you need to be at this point. So kudos to your organization to allow this to happen.
Thank you.
I am attending this event. The word tortillera, can you quickly touch base on what it means to you? The definition online reads as a derogatory term. Is that to you? Is it reclaimed in the queer Latinx community? Thank you for that question. It's actually quite interesting, because it is this whole panel, and a lot of the issues of words, of reclaiming words, have been happening in this Encuentro. So I'm very happy. Joteria, by God, in Mexico, marihuano is a bad word, but stoner is a cool word. So why is that? I don't know. Just these definitions. So I can define tortillera, but I'll let the person who said it define it.
Weren't there two of us who said it? Just me?
Yes, you.
The Cuban Puerto Rican?
Just you, but I'm also a tortillera. Now
Yes.
Okay. Actually, that was
I don't make tortillas.
It might have been appropriation, because I'm Cuban and Puerto Rican, so I really should have said the tostonera. Yeah, I think that we use the words, first of all, who doesn't love tortillas? And the fact that, lesbians are identified with something that everybody loves, I think is okay. But it's something that we can say, but everyone else has to pay us to use it.
Yeah.
We just
own etymology. What is the etymology?
Okay. So can I jump in?
That's how I do it.
I'm going to be direct. Yes. it's basically when you go see the women in Mexico make tortillas, they make the same sound as two women having sex.
Right? Sure. My neighbors
That's-
always complain when
that's-
they hear this. And I'm alone. That's the weird thing. Yeah.
That
I also think there's something about masa for me, that tortilla.
Oh my
that
God.
is
See, now we're gonna get into the sucia. Yes, that's why I did like this. Yes, and there's something about your mouth on a tortilla, especially when it's flour, as that for me invokes all sorts of memories and desires.
that's what we say areperas. in Colombia.
Aretera.
You say areperas
Yeah, arepera.
to refer to women and women.
Yeah,
It's
So for the person
delicious.
asking the question, to refer
It
to women and women
It
is
is.
what tortilla comes from.
Yeah.
So that became the joke with the bigotones. They asked me every morning if I was going to make tortillas, and
Ah!
I said no, but I will always be a tortillera.
Rodrigo, talk to me about the use of the palabra joteria, because you reclaim it a lot in the piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, calling someone joto just out of the blue, it's derogatory and it's hurtful. Even us who reclaim the word joteria, it still has an impact if someone without our permission says it. So, but for us, it's to embrace and to be unapologetic. And again, what we were saying in the beginning, it's resisting and making sure that before we say it louder, that we're not afraid. And it just feels nice to say joteria, and amongst ourselves we can call each other jotos, and we like jotear because it becomes just like this word that can be a noun and adjective and an adverb and everything. And it's just that the joteria it's allowing yourself just to be free and free yourself from all the bullshit that goes around. It's just like relax, just be, it's just allow yourself to jotear un poquito, just to relax. And I don't remember who said it, but I think it might have been Marga who said that everybody has or should have a little bit of queer. I don't know if it was Marga or Virginia who said it, but I think joteria should be also embraced in mainstream culture. When you're just allowed to jotear, you just leave all just prejudices out and you just relax and just chill. It's just that.
Also, I'm not a linguist, but I love these words like joteria, tortillera, sucia. Like there is a queerness even to the word, right? Puto. There's a queerness even to the word that is nice.
Yeah. Isn't there a character? I think the character of well, I considered her suicide in your play, but it was somebody else, Rodrigo, la que se vistió.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah, she's
She mentions like 20 different names of what being queer is in Spanish.
yeah, from different cultures.
From different cultures. It was a whole litany of beautiful names.
Yeah, and that note that the impact that it has on an individual, and she mentions when you're little, you don't understand those words. You don't know, you don't know what they mean, but they're meant to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you reclaim that power that you take that power from those who try to hurt you, and and you say, yes, I'm a joto, and so what? What is your pedo? Like, what is your problem?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm a joto, I'm a tortillera, I'm whatever, but it's up to me to say it. And I will not give you permission to say it unless I said so.
Mm-hmm. Elisa Noemi asks, what would you say to a younger self? What did you need to hear when you were 13, 15, 18 years old, queer Latinx baby self? Just do it.
I'll go. Um, breathe, breathe through everything that is going on. Just breathe and don't try to don't try to justify the things that are happening to you. They happen. Breathe through them. Let them come and go, and see how you change. And don't let the outside determine you. Just breathe.
I would say make a financial plan or find a good woman who has one.
And I would say that don't, you know, allow yourself to find those 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 other queer people like you in places where you think that they are not, and there are plenty. I found some of these queer friends, more, most valuable friends, in places where I didn't never thought. I thought that they were all in a bar, and while I found good friends in bars, it's not where all my friends have been. So just allow yourself to make friends. You know, nosotros nos encontramos. We found ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of minutes. Queer, queer. I know some of you are keep the queerness out of the mainstream, and some people say the mainstream has to represent everybody in the society they serve. Um, uh, like we need to make sure that this play has a gay character because this neighborhood is full of gay neighborhoods. Any thoughts on where queer theater should live?
Resourced. um, I I really do feel like people have different struggles. I really do. So I don't want to fight against people that are representation matters, our stories by us, let's change the face of Hollywood. All of those are important struggles, and they're cultural shifts. And I think cultural shifts need to happen. I personally want to make theater in I I want to make theater that is resourced, that is supported, um, where I feel supported, where my team feels supported. I want to make theater that is supporting other queer folks, and that's in its very process or in its models offers other ways to live outside of a capitalist system. Um, I want that. I want that to happen. Um, that doesn't mean that I don't and haven't been inside of institutions, which I have. Doesn't mean that I haven't been institutionally supported, which I have. But my commitment really is to a very specific community. And it continues to be to that specific community and not to patrons
Mm-hmm.
or ticket holders or boards or anything. None of that language means anything to me.
Um, I would just answer with, some years ago I wrote a story that this is a true story about a Colombian kid. I wrote a story based on a true story of a Colombian kid who took his life because of bullying in school, and he left a letter. And this letter was published by one of the biggest newspaper in Colombia. And in the letter, the kid said that his name is Sergio Rego. He said that he was not taking his life out of pity, but he was doing it as an act of revenge, so that the school would never forget what they did to him. And this changed a lot of things on legislation in my country. It was a big fight. Some years ago, somebody from the south in the states reached out to me, a mother, telling me that she had a kid, a white kid, in a white town, that had found my monologue, one of the monologues of the piece, and that this kid wanted to use it for an audition because he was being bullied in school. So this to say is, I think you're mentioning two things. You're thinking about queer as a system, queer as a way of being, and then queer as an identity inside of like the social context of what we see in media. And I think there are just completely different things, and we need them both. They have to exist, both of them.
Thank you.
I think that queer theater, besides how we find out about physical space, how we work our ourselves into physical space, I think that it is really a good thing to set yourself up for virtual performance. Um, you know, there are again different mediums, and I hate to say TikTok, but I'm talking about queer storytelling content, short sometimes, sometimes longer, but it doesn't I mean, it does cost something to present it well, and it really should. You should try to do your best. But with phones and all this, you can get your storytelling out there, even if it's on your own. I don't know, your own website, so on. But to get your voice out there and to get visibility, because I think that a lot of young Latinx queers are seeking it out online, and we should be there as well as in physical theaters.
Great.
Something that I would add to that is this is something that we always emphasize, that the stories that we bring to the stage are not meant to represent a whole community as complex as the Latinx LGBTQ community, that we just bring an experience or some of the experiences that we hope that echo in somebody's minds and hearts. And at the same time, for folks who want to bring this representation, again, just keep in mind that we are complex individuals and we have complex experiences, that just bringing the typical gay character into the scene, into the play, does not make it. We have to be further. There are so many layers and complexities in our lives that one single character will not be able to cover that. And so again, forgetting about just checking boxes, but being very intentional about going deeper. And instead of maybe asking what you want, is just come and do it. Supporting queer artists, bringing their stories, as opposed to us, writing them for them.
So I just wanted to add real quick, like I work in both traditional and non-traditional spaces. I work in both spaces. And when I work with young people, I always want them to go into spaces where they think that might not be theirs. I grew up going to museums. I grew up going to art galleries. I grew up going to those things because I had a working class father that was like, it's free. So let's go, And so it was always mine because it was free. And so, I used to be a school teacher, and that was always a big thing with me, to take students past Highway 90, which was like a dividing line in San Antonio, to be like, this is San Antonio. You can be here too. Like wherever you want to be, you can traverse those lines. But I remember taking a group of kids from East Los to very, very fancy theater to see Latino fancy people doing fancy things on the fancy stage. And the entire ride home, they talked about the bathrooms.
Yeah.
The bathrooms were nice. Did you see the bathrooms? Like the bathroom, and they had this, and the bathrooms, and everybody talked about the bathrooms the entire way home. And I remember sitting there and thinking, when people leave my fucking work, I don't want them talking about the bathroom. I want to create work that's what they're talking about, wherever it is. If it's in a prison, if it's under a highway, if it's in a train shed, if it's at a regional theater, wherever the work lives, when you walk out, I hope that the thing that you're talking about is what you witnessed and not how fancy the bathrooms are.
Oh, wow. I started thinking, oh, I should check the bathrooms When I do a play, make sure they're good.
Talk about sucias and tortilleras. Bathrooms were never cleaned. Remember when they used to have the signs, one person per stall?
I wonder why that was, right?
And then you saw 4 feet or 3 feet.
Yes.
Ana Bernal is a super fan of Virginia Grice. Woohoo! That's what it says down here. So this was amazing. I am going to wrap it up and
Have a drink.
oh my God, yes. I do want to. I know that all of you are very deep into this conversation, and if there's something that was left unsaid about this that might help the audience learn more about how to understand, how to cope, how to support Latinx queer voices, please do so.
Well, I just say just research and see who is presenting. And, it even means a lot if you can't be there just to send appreciation online, just to send an email, just let people know that, you see them.
Great.
I want to say that, again, from the works that I've seen through the Encuentro and seeing all these beautiful queer bodies on stage, it's been amazing. It's just a delight. And I think this has to do with who was behind the organization of the Encuentro, who were part of the selection committee, and how was the outreach done, and all these things. So this is a result of things that are working. And I think that this can be used as a model to continue doing it. I don't think that we've done it completely, but it's working. There's something working. And I think what is happening at Encuentro, having this panel right now, it's working. And I think we need to continue doing these things, bringing people to the table to make these decisions, to make these selections, bring more diversity of voices, because we're just very diverse. And
we're out there.
And applausos for all the people who put together or are putting together this encuentro, to all the artistas. Amazing. And yeah,
it was curated so amazing. I mean, all the plays, everything is different and powerful. Yeah.
Virginia, Gabriel, anything else?
I would say we talked about this at the beginning a little, but your local artist, your local queer artist, reach out to them. Those performers that you go to see in the bars doing drag, reach out to them. The comedians, the people who are doing music, who's around you, reach out to them and start to build those communities. Because with what I was saying before, if we make sure that our local communities are strong, then we can span and we can think about regionally and then nationally and then the world together.
Great.
I think that this is a moment where we really need to support artists. I really am a big advocate that supporting artists, developing their own processes for doing work that's artist driven, and really just supporting artists to have space to create, and supporting process driven work, I think is really important right now. And I feel like producing in the time of the pandemic, this is now my second live show that I've done. It is difficult. I'm in Texas. That's why it's my second live show. It's difficult. It's difficult in a way. It is difficult in a new kind of way. I think making theater is always challenging. It's challenging in a new kind of way. And so I really do think that artists are going to need a lot of time and space to just really discover what this moment is, because this moment should be different. It feels different, and we're different. And I think there needs to be time and space for that just to be true, and that people to be supported in in their work and finding their voice and supporting artists to do that.
Wow, that was great. That was really good. And that goes also not necessarily just for Latinx queer voices. All artists have a great perspective of things. Thank you so much for being in this panel. And I miss you all. And it was wonderful to.
Thank you, interpreters.
Oh, yes. Emma and Kelly. Thank you so much. So don't forget, we have like 4 more days or 5 more days to go of this Encuentro. Tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, the fabulous Melissa Dupre and her show, Good Grief. So join us then. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you, everybody.
Nice to meet you.